I still sleep with a light on. My husband says it's a phase. It's been 4 years. Everyone thinks a ghost story is about the moment you see something. It isn't. It's about the moment you understand what you heard. That autumn, my husband was stationed at a camp 6 hours inland. Not a base with a gate and a flag. A camp. Tents, prefabs, a generator that coughed all night, and a road out that turned to red dust in the dry and to soup in the wet. I took 2 weeks of leave to visit him. I loved it. I want to say that first because of everything that comes after. I loved being there with him. On the day I was due to travel home, the timing was wrong the way it always is out there. The bus from town left at 6 in the morning. The camp was 3 hours from town and there was nothing running from the camp. Nothing at all. So he signed out a vehicle and drove me in himself the afternoon before. He wasn't going to put me on that road alone. We got into town a little after 7 in the evening. Everything was shut. The bus depot was a concrete shelter with a corrugated roof, locked until morning. That left the motel. It sat at the end of the main street, where the streetlights gave up. A long, low building, white weatherboard, green trim, a veranda running the whole front with hanging baskets on it. Somebody swept that veranda every single day. You could tell. That's the part people never believe. It wasn't a ruin. It was cared for. The garden beds were edged. The brass room numbers were polished. The pen beside the guest book still had a cap on it. The woman who came out was in her 70s, maybe older. Cardigan, reading glasses on a chain, hands like paper. She was kind. She asked if we'd eaten. My husband asked for a room. She opened the book, and I watched her do something I only thought about later. She turned past a page, not a slow flick, a deliberate turn, thumb down, past it, like a page you don't look at. Then she wrote us into room 4, and she said, "You're at the front. You'll hear the trucks, but the front is better." I said, "Better than what?" And she smiled at me and said, "Better for sleeping." The corridor smelled of floor polish and old timber. The floorboards were the original ones, wide, dark boards, worn pale in a strip down the middle where 100 years of feet had gone. They creaked, but they creaked the way a house creaks. Nothing about it frightened me. Room 4 had a double bed with a chenille bedspread, a jug and 2 cups on a tray, and a window looking out at the road. There was a Bible in the drawer and a folded fly swat on the sill. I want to be very clear. I went to sleep happy that night, with my husband's arm across me, in a clean, quiet room, in a building somebody loved. He was asleep in about 4 minutes, the way he can. I lay there listening to the town do nothing. A dog somewhere. A truck out on the highway, changing down. The tin roof letting go of the day's heat. Tick, tick. I don't know what time it was when I woke up, but I know what woke me. It was a chain, not a jangle, not something rattling in the wind. It was the sound of a length of chain lying flat on floorboards and being dragged. Heavy, uneven, link by link. That specific noise where metal catches in the seam between 2 boards and then pulls free with a little knock. Scrape, knock, scrape, knock, knock. And underneath it, dragging along with it, a softer sound. Something that wasn't metal. Something bare and slow, on the wood. Footsteps. Bare feet. One of them not lifting properly. My first thought was completely ordinary. Somebody's brought a dog. That's what your brain does. It reaches for the ordinary thing and holds it up in front of you like a shield. Then it came closer, and I stopped believing it, because a dog on a chain moves at a dog's pace. This was walking, slowly, with the weight of a person, and the chain wasn't leading it. The chain was behind it, being pulled, dragging along behind whatever was walking, all the way down the corridor of a motel in a town with 1 street. It came level with our door, and it stopped. There is a gap under a motel door, 2 centimeters, enough to see the corridor light lying on the boards in a thin strip. I looked at it. I couldn't not look at it, and the strip of light was broken. 2 dark shapes standing in it, close together, the way feet stand when someone is standing still, and a third dark line lying across the boards behind them, curved, going off to the left. I have never in my life been so completely awake. I didn't wake my husband. People always ask me that, and the answer is stupid and true. I didn't want it to know there were two of us. It stood outside our door for a long time. Long enough that I started to count and lost count and started again. It wasn't breathing. There was no breath. That was the thing that broke something in me. Something was standing close enough that I could see its feet, and it was not breathing. Then the chain moved. Scrape. Knock. On, down the corridor, all the way to the end where the boards go quiet on the mat. And then nothing. It didn't come back. No door opened. No door closed. I lay awake until the window went gray. When it was light enough to see the pattern on the bedspread, I opened our door. The corridor was exactly what it had been. Polished, empty, a vase of dry flowers on the little table, no marks on the boards, nothing. My husband woke at 5:30 and said, "You look like you didn't sleep." I said I didn't sleep well. He said it was the heat. I didn't tell him. Not then. I was about to get on a bus and leave, and he was about to drive 3 hours back to a camp on his own. I did not want to hand him that. The old woman was at reception with the kettle already on. She looked at me for slightly too long. She said, "Room 4, all right?" And I said yes. "Because what else do you say?" And she nodded slowly and said, "Front's better," and went back to the kettle. At the depot, there were 4 of us waiting. There was an older man on the bench with a feed bag between his boots. Local. Weathered right through. He watched me for a while and then he said, "You're not well?" I said I hadn't slept. He said, "Where'd you stay?" I told him. The motel at the end of the street. The white one with the green trim. He didn't go pale. He didn't react the way people do in films. He just looked down at his boots and moved the feed bag a little, and he said, "Which room?" I told him, "Room 4. And then it came out of me all at once. The chain, and the feet, and the shadow in the gap under the door, and the fact that it stood there, and it did not breathe. My husband was staring at me. That was the first he'd heard of any of it. The old man let me finish. He didn't interrupt once. Then he said, "That building wasn't always a motel." He said it was a house, a family home. A couple lived there. Respectable people, church people, the kind everybody nodded to on the street. They had one son. He said the boy wasn't right. That's the phrase he used, and he used it gently, the way older people do when they mean he was born different and the town had no word for it. Slow to speak, slow to learn, never went to the school in town. But sweet, the man said. That was the word he kept coming back to. As a little one, he was the sweetest child. He'd sit on the front step and wave at everything that went past. Cars, horses, the mail, dogs, anyone. He waved at everybody. People used to look out for him. Then he grew. He got tall. He got strong, much stronger than his mother and eventually stronger than his father. And somewhere in there, something in him turned. He'd get frightened or frustrated and he'd lash out. He broke things. He hurt his mother's arm badly enough that she wore a sling to church. There was nowhere to send him. Not out there. Not then. No doctor. No place. No help. Just a couple in a weatherboard house with a son they'd stopped being able to hold. So they chained him, a length of chain on his ankle, fixed to the frame of the bed in the back room. Long enough that he could reach the window and the door, and no further. And that might have stayed the whole story. A sad thing, a thing people would have shaken their heads about and pitied, but it didn't stay there. It never does. Because once you've chained something, you've stopped seeing it as a person. And once you've stopped seeing it as a person, you can do anything at all. They beat him. Whenever the noise got too much. Whenever the neighbors were due. Whenever they were ashamed. And they stopped feeding him. First as a punishment, then as a habit. Then because it kept him quiet and weak and easier. The man said people in the street noticed the noise stopping. That's the detail that has never left me. The town noticed that the boy who used to wave at everything had gone quiet, and the town decided that was an improvement. He went from strong to thin, from thin to something people couldn't look at. Towards the end, someone who'd known that boy his whole life came to the door and didn't recognize him. And then 1 week the parents were gone. No goodbye, no sale. The good furniture went, the car went, they went. They left him chained to the bed frame in the back room of that house. Nobody went in for a while. Nobody wanted to be the one. When they finally did, the first thing that hit them was the sound, before the smell, before anything they could see. The sound. The house was full of flies, floor to ceiling, wall to wall, every window black with them, a whole house humming. They found him in the back room. The chain was still on him, and his eyes were open. That's the part the town never let go of. Not the flies, not the chain. The fact that he died with his eyes open looking at the door. Because you only die looking at a door if you spent the last of yourself waiting for somebody to come back through it. The house stood empty for years. Then it changed hands, and changed hands again. Somebody added rooms along the back and put a veranda on the front and painted it white with green trim and called it a motel. The old man said, "They keep it lovely, don't they?" I said yes. He said, "They have to." And then he told me the last thing, and the bus was coming and I've had 4 years to wish he hadn't. He said people hear a chain in that corridor. Not often, not everyone. But it's known. Known the way things are known in a small town, which is to say nobody advertises it and everybody's cousin has a version. He said it walks the floor at night, bare feet and the chain behind it, up the corridor and back, looking in at the doors. And he said the back room of the old house, the room the boy was chained in, isn't the back of the building anymore. Because of the extensions they built. It's near the front now, it's room 4. The bus came. The old man picked up his feed bag and got on ahead of me, and he didn't say another word about it. Not for 6 hours, not once. I sat by the window and watched the motel go past, white and green and swept and perfect in the morning sun. Here's what I think about, and it isn't the fear. Something stood outside my door in the dark, and it stopped. It stood there long enough for me to count, and lose count. It didn't come in. It didn't try the handle. It didn't do a single thing to us. It stood at the door, and it waited, and then it moved on, and it checked the next one. I don't think it was hunting anybody. I think it's still waiting for somebody to come back for it. I think it's been walking that floor a very long time, room to room, checking, in a building that strangers keep beautiful because they can feel that they owe it something. I said I sleep with a light on. That's not quite the whole truth. I sleep with the light on, and I leave the hallway light on too. And I have never once been able to make myself lie in the dark and listen to somebody's bare feet on floorboards. Because the worst thing I know is not that something stood outside my door, it's that it was still waiting to be let in, and nobody ever came.